Hello, my name is Ashley Rovera. I wanted to record a quick introduction for the benefit of the podcast listeners. This introduction will be the appendage to my interview with John Mese, which was recorded on the 25th of March, 2023. The impetus for that interview was an award he had received not long before we did the interview. It was the Best Acting Performance Award for his role in a short called Bugtussle. I've included a link related to this film, two links actually, in the show notes, and a few other relevant links as well, one of which is an article about him that I wrote after the interview aired. We talked a lot about Bugtussle, which he is extremely proud to have been a part of and to have had such a huge role in. With Bugtussle, he told me, and this is a direct quote, "I had a big part and I got to swing for the fences," end quote. I was most interested to talk about that kind of work, even though John Mese has been an actor since the 80s, and he has worked in countless plays, TV shows, and a few movies, such as Noise in the Middle, 2020. He even wrote and directed an independent short film called Perfect Day, 2007. I personally saw lots of Soderbergh influence in the style of the film, the way it was shot, and he confirmed that Soderbergh, another Baton Rouge guy, actually had influenced the film a lot. And interestingly, he also said that another influence behind that film was a 2001 film called Ghost World. The Perfect Day cast included his friend Eddie Jemison, who has been his friend since they were in school together at LSU. We talked a lot about LSU and how that network, organized and guided by the acting professor John Dennis, really jump-started his acting career and has remained a dominant force in his career today. He and Eddie and others from the same network, Joe Crest, Wayne Perret, came together to make an amazing and critically acclaimed feature film called King of Herrings. That took up a lot of airtime because even though his acting part was small in it, his behind the scenes part in it was huge. And it is one of his proudest accomplishments. We devoted lots of time to the one-man show, Wild Son, the testimony of Christian Brando, written by Champ Clark. That show is all John Mese, in the flesh, on the stage as Christian Brando. He's done it in coffee houses, restaurants, and theaters in Los Angeles and San Francisco. I saw it on Father's Day, 2022, at Bistro Byron's in Baton Rouge. Later the same summer, he and Champ took their show to the Festival Fringe in Edinburgh, Scotland, where it was produced by Brian Moore, another associate from the LSU John Dennis Acting Network. Being more interested in talking about his character roles and the work he's produced, I didn't get around to asking about the many TV roles he's been cast in over the years, like X-Files. He was in an episode of X-Files called Chimera, and he's been in countless TV shows like Reasonable Doubts, Law and Order. In 1998, he was part of the HBO miniseries From the Earth to the Moon. He played in 2 episodes of that series alongside Mark Harmon, and Frederick Lane. It was a docudrama in which the trio reenacted the Apollo 7 mission. We never got around to talking about any of that, unfortunately. I think his work, where he got to be more independent and actually part of the creative process, just took up so much space that we forgot, we just overlooked things that maybe you can easily learn from Wikipedia or the IMDb database. Nevertheless, it was fascinating to hear about such a long, dedicated, content-rich career and frankly, life. I really hope you enjoy it too. So without further ado, I give you John Mese. A boy from Baton Rouge.
Just a boy.
Just a boy from Baton Rouge, boy from the Red Stick. So that's where it all began for you. Now, let's go back to how and why you got into acting. I think that's where I'd like to start. Was this something that you were doing as a kid?
Not really, but yes. I sort of, I liked just kind of playing characters maybe in real life, just a little bit, not a huge amount. Okay. There's an interesting thing to me that I started doing impressions when I was really young, basically because I was watching Rich Little, which was an impressionist at the time that was on TV, like The Tonight Show and stuff. So I would do impressions that he did, and one of the funny things to me is my father was a dentist, and I would go to his office, and they had these little cotton wads that they would stuff in the patient's mouth to absorb saliva while he's working on them. And I would go there and take them and stuff them in my mouth, and I would do Marlon Brando. And so one of the very first impressions that I ever did was Marlon Brando, just from having watched Rich Little do him, and he's in The Godfather. So and then I end up playing Christian Brando and Wild Son. So and having to do Marlon Brando. So that.
That's really cool. Talk about full circle. Gosh, that's
But I loved movies and I loved TV when I was young, and I think that was one of the most vibrant presences in my life. I was good at school, but I was kind of I don't know. I was kind of a wallflower for a long time until about 8th grade when all of a sudden girls started paying attention to me a little bit, and then I was just overwhelmed by that. And I didn't really go into acting when I was in high school. I think I was a little scared of doing that at an all-boys high school where it wasn't really looked at as cool, and so when I went to LSU and I was in the master's program, there was, before I was in the master's program, I was in the Sigma Chi fraternity, and there was a brother there that was a senior, and his name was Barry Lee, and he was an LSU cheerleader, and he was also very involved in the acting program at LSU, and he kind of made it cool, or okay for me to take an acting class.
Okay.
So that's really, really the first time I ever got anything sort of serious about it. Although I did do, an 8th grade play, which was a thing that everybody did, and I think that was kind of it.
Remember what it was, or do you remember what it play?
It was The Music Man. And I didn't play The Music Man, but I did audition for that part, and got down to me and one other guy, Kyle Rockamore, and he got it. I couldn't sing, and he could sing. But I had kind of memorized the thing off the album, and I could say it. Well, either you're closing your eyes to a situation you do not wish to acknowledge, or you're not aware of the caliber of disaster indicated by the presence of a pool table in your community. And I still remember it from 8th grade.
Wow.
But I messed it up, and we were auditioning in church, and I said, I tripped on the language, and I said, "You're not aware of the caliber." Shit.
Oh no.
Nuns.
No. Okay. Yes.
But nobody said anything, and they let me go, and but I didn't get the part. But I did get to play Mayor Shin, which is the mayor of the town, and it was it was awesome, and I liked it. But then I kind of never really looked at it again until college.
So you got into acting classes in undergrad through your fraternity. Okay, so and then I know there's that video that you did where you talk about Sam Shepard and how you read Tooth of Crime, right? And
yes.
that was actually your first play?
It was not my actual first LSU play. I guess what happened is I took several classes. There were many people that were involved in the program because John Dennis had just come to LSU and was teaching, and it was sort of starting, the religion of John Dennis over there. It was becoming a big deal, and
he started the master's program, right?
Yeah, he had not started it yet when I was an undergrad.
Okay.
And I did one play for summer theater there called Sly Fox. And so that was the very first thing I did. And I liked it. I had fun doing it. But I thought maybe I would move to Los Angeles, and perhaps somehow I could direct commercials or something. And maybe that would be fun, because they were like little mini movies or something. And this was all going on in my brain when I bumped into John Dennis at Coffee Call in Baton Rouge and asked him if I could audition to play Biff in Death of a Salesman.
Okay.
Is that right? I think that's the play. Yeah, they were doing Death of a Salesman. And people had said, "Oh, you could play Biff. That would be a good role for you." Like when I was first taking classes in undergrad, and John Dennis. That's the whole story that I tell, that you watch. But John Dennis said, "Oh yeah, you could come and audition, but I'm doing this play, Tooth of Crime by Sam Shepard." And I knew who Sam Shepard was from watching the movie The Right Stuff, and he was like this super cool dude, right? But I went and read Tooth of Crime, and it was just, I don't know, it just blew my mind. It was just crazy language, lots of cuss words. Oh, P.S. Can we cuss here? I don't want to. I'll take it down. If you don't want it, I won't. But I do tend to cuss a lot, especially when I talk about acting. But there was a lot of cuss words in the play, and I found that very thrilling to say the language, and because I was kind of brought up, you don't cuss in front of elders and that kind of stuff. I never cussed in front of my parents. My parents never cussed in front of me. But I've had a career of playing people that use language fairly liberally, I would say. And this was a play that had a lot of language in it, and it was fun to say, and not just cuss words, but read Tooth of Crime, and you'll see what a genius Sam Shepard was. He created a language. They speak in sort of a futuristic rock and roll language that is all made up, and it's about kind of a street gang temperament of actors are out there musicians are out there trying to rule the world, gain new sections of the territories of the world. And it's mind blowing, but it's what started me. I did it, and I thought, this is what I want to do. It was like being Hamlet in a rock and roll world, and it blew my mind.
You were all in. And I like how, one thing that is so striking, is so interesting, is like the network that you kind of built in that program. I mean, you're still like best friends with all these guys. You know, the King of Herrings people, which honestly is my personal favorite.
Yeah, it's something. I mean, King of Herrings, of course, was written and directed by Eddie Jemison and also directed by Sean Richardson, who's the only sort of outsider that we pulled in who was the DP. But yeah, King of Herrings was Joe Crest, Wayne Perret, David Jensen, myself, Eddie Jemison, Carl Palmer, and then Laura Lampson, Eddie's wife, who was also, I guess, an outsider, but just because she wasn't from LSU. But me and Eddie were doing a class out here in Los Angeles that would meet every Wednesday night, and we would just kind of do scenes and write scenes sometimes. Sometimes we would do other people's work. Sometimes we would do David Mamet, Shepard, anybody. And then Eddie started working on this idea. He wrote a scene, and people got up and read it. And I kind of was just sitting in the audience working with him, like giving him notes, and he would bring the scene back. And after he wrote one scene, he said, I'm going to write another scene for these guys. And it was, I think the first scene he wrote was the first scene of the movie. It's him and Gat walking down the street talking about.
I like that. Nice word.
There's a word.
It doesn't count as a curse word because it's not an actual word. So you're good.
Yeah. But that's the. That's the genesis of that project, and he kept writing it until he got the whole thing done. And we were going to do the play with John Dennis, was going to direct it, but John was getting old. I don't think any of us expected him to like not live long enough to see the film. I think he fell out of doing the play, and that's when we decided to shoot it as a film.
Okay. But he was involved too. Sorry to transition away from King of Herrings. Maybe we can come back to it, but he was involved as well in Perfect Day, right? John Dennis did the casting for that.
Absolutely. I had written Perfect Day, and I wanted to shoot this movie, and I was trying to remember. There's another movie that sort of was kind of a little bit of an inspiration for me, but I came up with this idea, and I really wrote it about a girl, but it's really kind of about me, like it's my character. That's sort of like something I went through when I was younger, and I wrote my character as a girl because I've always found women and girls to be more fascinating than guys for some reason, but I mean, they're more complicated to me, and I've like guys are easy. Guys are, I went to an all boys high school, and I was in a fraternity. I just feel like what we talk about is less in depth, and then when I have relationships with women, it's very complicated, and all kinds of interesting things come up. So I flipped the script on that. And I wrote it, and I just wanted to cast it with some young college age kids. And I thought, oh, well, John Dennis has, acting students. I'm out here. So I asked him if I could come in and sort of audition some of his students. And he said, absolutely. And he kind of put it together for me. Yeah. And he read it, and he had an idea, and he said, these are probably the people you want. And so I kind of almost just, I think just took his recommendations. I met them, and I said, oh my gosh, she's perfect. Tara McMullen was the lead, and she was perfect. And Preston Davis and Eric Little, all these cats. And then Eddie I brought in.
Eddie, of course, yeah. And Eddie's wife, obviously, Laura.
Oh yeah. I got Laura to play two different parts.
Yeah. And then I think Wayne, he did the editing, which, or no, was it?
Yeah, he actually did. That's the it's good because you've like studied all this stuff. I haven't thought about that, but like, yeah, nobody really had the editing equipment yet, but Wayne had this great Mac computer with it. He had like one of the first really professional editing programs, and it was slow going because he was like kind of teaching himself how to do it. But I'm thinking like, well, okay, yeah, that's right, because I had somebody else edit. You saw the other thing, Sneaking Sally, but yeah, so we did Wayne's over at Wayne's house. I would go over there and we'd sit there for a couple hours and edit it together.
It was great because you're all friends and you're working together, and it's but at the same time, I guess, because you're all such strong personalities with your own kind of vision, it was kind of hard to coordinate. Actually, like, I don't know.
Cats in a bag. It was cats in a bag, like trying to herd cats. And yeah, that's Eddie's something he said. And yeah, I mean, it was interesting, but it's what made it work. In other words, everybody came to it saying, I'm going to do this. Like, we do a lot of stuff for television and film where they just kind of put a lot of constraints on you. They want you to be this kind of character. And everybody said, well, I'm doing this and I'm not going to really make any money for it, but I have an idea of what I want to do with it. So everybody kind of brought their own thing to it, which is what I really think most films, that like great films, that's how they're made. They give you a character and they say, hey, bring this alive. And that's what everybody did in King of Herrings. David Jensen did that character the way he wanted to do it. And Joe Crest did, his character the way he wanted to do it. Wayne did it, You
weren't micromanaged. You were able to do bring your own flavor to it, each one of you.
Absolutely. Which is why I think you find such a life in that film, which is a little bit stronger than most films that I've, gotten to participate in, and certainly that I even see sometimes,
Yeah.
I did screen Perfect Day at the New Orleans Film Festival first. That was, that's the weird thing is we were all kind of just going, all right, well, we're acting out here, getting parts, but we're, I mean, I'm sorry, most of the parts that we get are just not as interesting as the stuff that we've done on stage.
I agree. I agree.
And certainly not as interesting as what we can write. Like when Eddie started writing that was always my thing, is I had seen, and it's still to this day, I've seen the best acting I've ever seen, most interesting acting in acting classes. And with the Wednesday night and with John Dennis's classes, I would see this amazing work. And especially when Eddie started writing that, I was like, okay, this is better than anything we get to act in. So when he wanted to make it, I joined him full force to help him get it done the way he wanted to get it done. And because he didn't know as much about filmmaking as maybe I did, because I had already made Perfect Day and Sneaking Sally Down the Alley, which I shot on film. It was before digital, so we shot that on 16 millimeter, which made it even harder to make your own movie, because you had to shoot it on film, get it developed, have it imported into a computer so that you could edit it. And then you had to know people that had all this stuff. But I had done all these things. So when Eddie decided to make his first film, I just had kind of a plethora of, handyman knowledge on how to do a lot of stuff. And so that's what I was, his extra crew member. I just helped him get things done from the beginning, and it was the best, because it was our friends and what Eddie wrote. And then Sean Richardson came in and just knew how to shoot it, and he had his own, artistic vision that he brought to it that was just bumped it up another level, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So,
it's like when you ask these questions, I start bouncing all over the place too.
No, that's awesome. I actually, you mentioned something in there, but I kind of forgot it. Maybe it'll come back. So, okay, let's talk about Augie. Okay, because I remember in one of the videos, I think it's the behind the scenes one on your Vimeo page. You're talking about the way, because I guess Eddie did all the casting, correct? And
Yes.
so, and you mentioned how he had kind of an anti-type cast approach, especially to Joe Crest and Wayne. But you did talk about your role. Like how do you fit in? I'd like, would you say that was a typecast or anti-type?
I don't know. Like, I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like, I don't think in the beginning that I was even in it as an actor. Like, I don't even know if Augie was a role, or I'll put it to you this way: Augie was there, but I had worked with Eddie on all these scenes, like in acting class. I had helped him. I'd given him notes, and we had different actors reading the parts, guys from out here, and I didn't even remember. Like he offered me the role of Augie, and I was like, "Who's Augie?" And he's like, and he goes, the guy that runs the. I go. There's a character. Like I didn't even remember there being a guy, because you have to admit, if you look at it, it's a very tiny role. I
Very
mean,
subtle. Yeah.
he
Yeah.
speaks a few times, but he's there. But if you're reading the script, he doesn't jump off the page at all.
True.
Um,
Yeah.
so in the day, I always thought Eddie was just like he needed somebody to do it, or he was throwing me a bone, like here's something. He felt bad because we did all this. We had worked on it so much, and everybody else was in it. But what was interesting to me about Augie was I didn't have to do any serious work other than just be there with those guys while we were making the film, and I'm really happy with the way it came out. I mean, I love Augie, and most of it's just because he gave him that great monologue where he has a scene where he talks to the two guys, and you kind of look at it as he's really the only one that is not a total child. I think. I mean, he's a little bit more grown up than the rest of them, because they're all still. I mean, he's had his heart broken. They've left him. I mean, he's had his many run-ins with women, and I think he's sort of, when you find that movie starts, he's just, as you were talking to me about something that might be a through line, he's a lost man, and so he's got this diner that he gets up every morning and he runs. But if you think about it, it's a pretty bust out diner, man. I mean, because you got those four cats coming to the diner. You don't really have anybody else, which I think is cool, that you don't really notice it while you're watching the movie, but that's who you see in that diner. The four main characters, and then finally Laura's character comes.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel that empty, but because the way they fill it up.
Yeah. He kind of, Augie kind of takes himself out of it, he takes himself out of the drama. He with, like he talks about how he withholds. He's just completely withdrawn, but he's still there. He's just, he's just kind of
I think he judges. He looks down at those guys because they're like, he just keeps sort of being exasperated.
The drama. Yeah, the drama. Yeah.
Bullshit. They don't have the and I don't know that Augie would be any better than them. I don't know. He just seems a little bit more grown up than them. Like I said, like he just seems a little bit past where they are in the moment of the film.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's got the kind of, I guess there's an emotional maturity there, because he doesn't get sucked into the drama. So, yeah. So Anita's Grill, that is a good segue into the filming locations, which is another interesting thing. I guess you guys really didn't have to pay anything to film, I mean, You talked about you actually shot there for free. Like,
Yeah, we shot there for free. We shot at LSU Stadium in the
oh yeah,
bathroom for free. But a lot of that, like one of the things is it's Eddie.
yeah,
Eddie could charm anybody into anything. I'm sure of it. But like he walked into the diner and he loved it, but he brought his daughter with him when he asked. And his daughter was like,
cute.
I don't know, maybe 7 or something, Daisy. And he's like sitting there with his daughter on his lap, talking to the owner, going, yeah, I'm making this movie. And the cool thing about Eddie is he's recognizable to a lot of people because of some of the films that he's done, like Ocean's 11, and that being like one that really kind of made a lot of people saw that movie.
Yeah.
But and in New Orleans, they recognize him as famous. But you know, Eddie's like the most down to earth guy, and he's just super sweet and charming. And yeah, I mean, I don't think I could have talked an owner of a restaurant like that into letting me use it for free, but Eddie did. And that was huge because the diner is, I mean, it's the movie location, the main location. The apartments that we got, I think were his aunt's house. And then we just stole some locations too, like on LSU campus,
Yeah.
including that bathroom. We just snuck in, you know.
Oh wow. Okay.
We just snuck in, put our equipment in there and shot, and then snuck out.
Derek Sitter. Let's go to Bugtussle. So how did you get in? How did you get into that clique? The let's call
Okay.
it Bend, Oregon, the Bend, Oregon boys.
Well, you might not even know this, but
I probably don't.
Derek, I know Derek from John Dennis
Oh, really? Okay.
from LSU.
Right.
Derek was in the master's program at LSU about maybe 3-4 years after me. It was definitely 3 years because he was not there when I was at LSU. I think maybe he came and checked it out. He's from Oklahoma.
Right.
All right. And anyway, I'll try to like cut to the chase. He was there when I had moved to Los Angeles, and I was like, you know, I got a TV gig on with Marlee Matlin. I was playing her love interest on a TV show. So I was like the guy who made it, you know, right at the beginning. I was on TV for 16 episodes, and everybody thought that was amazing. And I thought it was amazing. So I was living out in Los Angeles when Derek graduated from LSU, and him and his wife, Jeannie, Jeannie had graduated with him. And I don't think they were married yet, but they moved out to Los Angeles together. And I'm trying to remember how it all shaped out. They came out for like a showcase. You know, they came to Los Angeles to do a showcase in order to try to find like an agent and stuff, which is the same thing I did when I graduated with my class with Joe Crest and them.
Yeah.
And
What is that exactly?
a showcase is like you rent a theater and you get your group of actors to do scenes, and you invite agents and casting directors to come to it so they can watch these young actors who have never done anything but have studied and have done plays to see if anybody wants to represent them to the industry. And so John Dennis had done that. Our class was the first MFA class. You know, me, Joe Crest, David Jensen, and Eddie Jemison were in it, but they quit after the first semester or first year. But anyway, we came out when we graduated and did this showcase. And years later, Derek and his not yet wife, Jeannie, came out to do a showcase. And John Dennis called me and he said, hey, I got this guy, Derek Sitter, and his girlfriend, Jeannie. They need a place to stay when they come out for the showcase. And I said, they can stay at my place. That's fine. Because I think I had a pretty cool like apartment then. I think I was living on on Cloverdale. And so they came and stayed with me. It might have been on, I think it was when I lived across the street from Joe Crest. I don't remember the original circumstances, but I do remember that they came and stayed with me. And that's when I really got to be kind of close with them, because they were there for like 3 or 4 days. And then after they graduated, they moved to Los Angeles. And I never really seen him. I helped him get an apartment. And then I never really saw him that much while he was in LA. He was working, and he was working with the Actors Studio. And he got parts and stuff, but we were kind of in different circles. And then he moved up to Bend, Oregon, and started VTP, the Volcanic Theater Pub, and had a whole life with that. But we were kind of just in touch, you know. So Derek would come here, and you know, I'd pick him up and give him a ride to, you know, a restaurant before he would get on the plane to go somewhere else. And then during pandemic, we started talking about, he sent me the script for Bugtussle, and I just gave him my thoughts, and he kept sending it back to me, and I was reading it, and I was telling him, yeah, you know, this is great. And I was asking him questions about it. And finally, after I read about 3 different drafts of it, I said, oh, you know, I said, every time I read this, I think you're Coyote and I'm Crow. I go, I don't know why, but that's the way it is in my brain. I don't know if that's what you're thinking. And he was like, no, man, that's not what I'm thinking at all. Like, huh? He goes, but that's really cool. And so, like, he was really just kind of getting my my thoughts on it. And when I said that, I think he just started thinking along those lines. And the next thing I knew, that's what we were going to do. And I'm really glad I spoke up, because it's one of those things where you just say, if I hadn't said that, I wouldn't have done that role. And I loved doing that with him and the crew there in Bend. And it was just because he was trusting me with his early drafts, and he wanted my input, but I kept reading it and thinking, all right, so he's obviously Coyote and I'm obviously Crow, you know, which, I mean, if you watch the film, which you did, it's the right casting, you know, I mean, it's kind of perfect. And I don't know that was his idea when he was writing the script at all. I don't think it was. But so, yeah, we got to do that, and he was very thorough.
Was he more thinking that he was going to be Crow? Or
I think maybe he was going to play Crow, but you see with Derek, he does a lot of different, you know, he's a character actor. I mean, he does a lot of different characters. I think you saw Tutu Grande, right?
Mhm.
You know, and so he's kind of like, you know, the quiet, intense, cool guy in that.
Yeah.
Just to watch him in both of those 2 pieces, you see a huge range of him. So maybe he did have this idea of playing Crow, and maybe he had an idea of somebody else playing Coyote. I don't know, but you know, that's me from a long time ago. When I read something, and if I connect to it, I'm going to speak up. And it's not the first time I've gotten a part by just saying, hey, how about me? Because, you know, a lot of times people don't even think that you're interested unless you say that, you know?
Are you going to work with Derek again? Because you guys really are a dynamic duo. I'm not kidding.
I mean, like I said, I hope so. I really hope so. Derek has always got so much going on. And he just sold his Volcanic Theater Pub. And so I don't even know where he's going to live. If he comes back out to LA, which I hope he does, that would be a great chance to work with him again.
Yeah.
I want to work with him again. And the reason Bugtussle is literally the way we shot it, the way he put it together. It's my fantasy of what it would be like to shoot independent films, like at a great level. Because we rehearsed it, we learned it. He actually came out to LA, and we sat in this garage, and like he worked with me for like, you know, about 6 hours through the whole film. And you don't do that with most movies. We got on Zoom like this and read the whole script out until we learned it and memorized it. So it was rehearsed to the point where we could kind of like go at it when we shot, you know. And I think you see that in the film. You don't see an actor reaching for a line. You see actors that are entrenched in that world, and you know, he's very easy. He gives that anyway in his performance. He's there, and I like to be there. And he created a world where it's easy to be there. So I would do anything with Derek again, because like I said, that's the most fun I've had working on a film as an actor.
So, yeah, you guys shot it in like a day or something, right?
We shot the entirety of the interior, which is basically the whole film, in one day. Yeah. And that's,
Wow.
I think it's 21, 22 pages. And just to give you a for instance or an example, Hollywood, when you shoot a television series, it's kind of normal to shoot maybe 5 pages a day.
Okay.
And that's with a huge crew, and you're on a sound stage. They might try to shoot like 5 pages a day. We shot over 20 in
Wow.
one day.
Wow.
And the reason we could do that is because he thought it all out. And there's that one location where we're trapped, and it's just me and him and then one other actor, and everybody just really learned their shit. And then you have his camera crew, which they're all phenomenal. I mean, he's got these guys that really know how to shoot with cameras. They set it up in their brains. They got in there, and they didn't make us hit a lot of marks. They said, you guys do it, and we're going to be over here, and we're just going to cover it. We're going to shoot it. And so it was almost like we're in that barn, in that dirt for a day, just doing rehearsals and just going at it. And those guys were just shooting us. It wasn't like you had to like do a lot of things to satisfy them. They were there to cover us and make sure that we got everything. And so it was awesome. You know, I mean, just it's what, as an actor, when you work on stage, it's what you think it's going to be like to make a really cool film. Because it's not always. A lot of times when you work on TV, you know, it's very staid and like, okay, you're going to stand here and you're going to look this way and you're going to say this line. And then at this moment, we want you to grab your coffee cup. Okay. And yes. And then you wave, you know, I mean, it's just, it's like,
yeah,
we were going at it. And I feel like it's like that in Eddie's world too, for King of Herrings. But I know that you don't get this, but I didn't have much of an acting part in King of Herrings. To me, it was very small and it was very easy, and I liked it. But when you look at the breadth of what I did in King of Herrings, all of those reaction shots of me in the movie, we did that in like one take, maybe two, maybe he did it twice, and I just sat there and I kind of looked at these guys, and they got all my stuff that quick, except for the scene where I talk. And with with Bugtussle, it's kind of like we're playing hardball. Yeah, King of Herrings is another dreamscape for me, like of what I wanted to do when I became a film actor. I just don't have a big role in it as an actor. What I did have a huge role in, I was a producer, and I was the first AD. I had a huge behind the scenes role in King of Herrings. Yeah. In Bugtussle, I had a big part, and I got to swing for the fences with it, and it was fun. That's it leads me to the reason that I feel like I got to Bugtussle. It's another reason is because of Wild Son. Because Wild Son, that was the one that opened me back up, because I had been doing TV and commercials and any role that I could get just to pay the bills. And I was kind of getting dead, as an actor. It just wasn't thrilling me at all. And then Champ Clark handed me Wild Son. I read that in front of a bunch of strangers, and I was like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. I forgot. This was like flashing back all the way to Tooth of Crime and Sam Shepard. And so I did that play. Derek came to Los Angeles and saw it. And that's before we did Bugtussle. And I think it just opened the door. It just opened the door for me and him to have conversations about stuff again. And that's why I connect those two parts as an actor, and I go, I get to swing for the fences in both of those parts, in those pieces. I mean, in Wild Son, I'm on stage for an hour telling a story, and it's just me. And in Bugtussle, it's just me and Derek going at it tooth and nail. So those are the type of roles and acting work that it turns me on. It makes me get excited.
That's why I completely get that, because I did watch a few of what I call the professional acting roles that you had, in the professional world, where stand here, do this, and it's very formulaic, and it's if you're a lawyer, you're a lawyer, you're a client, it's like that. But I mean,
well, they put you in a box.
Yeah.
They see you, they say this is what you are, and then they want to they go, oh, he can do this.
Yeah.
And they really want you to do what they want you to do. And you try to bring something good to it, and every once in a while you get an opportunity to do that. Like I got to do a bad guy on Law and Order. Mm-hmm. And it was a big role, and the director, Michael Pressman, he just let me go. So I was still working in the constraints of a television show, a very popular television show that's been around forever. But they let me kind of be me, and the other actors were really great actors. And I think that's kind of how they shoot that. They shoot it a little bit like they're all pros. And if you get a chance to work with them, they treat you like a pro too. And so you get to kind of just go. It's still a little bit more of a machine than like when you work with your friends, and you don't always have the idea fully fleshed out until you do it. They kind of have a little bit more of that worked out on their end, but the opportunities are few and far between in the television world, and I think even the film world. I haven't worked in movies as much as some of my friends, like Joe Crest and David Jensen, and Eddie even, and Wayne, and Carl Palmer. But I think you will see them in movies, and the big deal is you get the role, and you get the money, and you get the time somewhere. It's very, very seldom that you go, wow, look at the scene I did. Look at the work I did. It's not as much about the work. Joe Crest has had a couple of scenes and parts in movies that are exciting. They're Steven Soderbergh films,
Yeah. Well, I think that Joe Crest actually really kind of, on Stranger Things. I know it's a small part, as they say, but it's like it's actually a very interesting part,
Yeah.
I mean, almost like Augie, he's not sort of doing a lot, but what he's doing is actually really cool.
But there's two things. There's two things I would say about that. One, you're absolutely right. And like, to me, Augie is a fantastic role because of what it turned out to be. It's just not, it's not my dream role as far as shooting it. But with Joe, he's done a lot of those kinds of roles, like small roles. They're here. Yeah. But what's really cool to me about his work on Stranger Things is right after we did King of Herrings. but he got that. And
Hmm.
King of Herrings is kind of the first time I saw Joe really bring Joe to the character, like the professor. Like
Okay.
he brought the sort of oddity that Joe Crest is to the character of the professor in King of Herrings. And I think he kind of brought the oddity of who Joe is to the father character in Stranger Things. So even though, he's just there, here, there, which by the way, on a TV gig is a fantastic job because you work a day and then 2 weeks later you work another day and you're getting money and you're getting money and you're getting money. And he gets to do interesting things because they hired him to be that weird guy that he is, So he gets to have fun, even in these little bitty scenes.
Yeah. So okay, so we talked about Wild Sun. Let's talk about where you've been so far with Wild Sun. Do you mind sharing kind of the timeline of how Wild Sun went? Like where was the beginning? And
all right, I'll tell you the story of. So Wild Sun started like this.
okay.
Champ Clark was in the Wednesday night acting class that I was in with Eddie Jemison. And the only reason I was there was because of Eddie. And there was a bunch of Chicago actors. And Champ was a person who acted a lot in Chicago and then moved out here and started working for People magazine and never got to act again. So Champ was in the class. We became close. After about 2 or 3 years, we exited the class. I had kind of had my fill of it, and Champ had his fill of it. Not everybody was getting along in that class anymore. Eddie was still there, but we wanted out and we got out. And then over time, we were doing things together. I can't remember what in particular, but he had that script that he had written as an idea of something. He didn't know what it was, but he had met Christian Brando through People magazine. Like he did a story when Priscilla, not Priscilla. There's a woman named, and I don't know what her name is, Deborah Presley. Okay. She married Christian Brando, and Deborah Presley was first in the news because she claims to be the illegitimate child of Elvis Presley. Now, this has never been proven or anything, but she kind of seems to be someone that maybe wants to be in the limelight. And she met Christian Brando, and she married Christian Brando, and she called the offices of People magazine and said, "I just got married to Christian Brando, and you guys haven't even done a story on us." So they assigned it to Champ to call her and ask about this fact that they had gotten married. So Champ called and he tells the story, but it's like he said they were in the car driving around, and he was talking to Deborah Presley, and he heard somebody wailing on a harmonica in the background, and it was Christian. And he asked if he could talk to Christian. He spoke to him a little bit, and they kind of later on he asked him if he could like interview him, and he wasn't working for People magazine. He just was interested in meeting Christian and finding out more about him because he always thought he was an interesting character that nobody really knew about. Over time, they developed a friendship, and over time, he asked him, if you want to, sit down and do some interviews so I can tell your story. And I think he says Christian was like, my story? You want to hear me?
Oh, wow.
He was touched, he was kind of flabbergasted. And he said that would be like amazing because nobody really wanted to know his story. So they did it. They got together over a series of weekends with Champ pressing record. And, the only thing he said was that like Christian would, have like a 6-pack of beer and we just sit there and pull on the beers. and talk. And he recorded it all, and then he condensed it and edited it down to what he thought was, the most important parts of the story. And it was just sitting there collecting dust because nothing had ever happened to it. And he asked me to come over to his apartment and read it. And I did. And when I read it, about 3 or 4 pages into it, I started feeling like this is so present tense the way he wrote it, that I feel like I'm becoming the guy just by saying the words. And after I finished it, he goes, I think we should read this in front of like an audience. And I was like, yeah. I said, there's something there. And he put together this reading with a bunch of actors and writers. And we did it at this coffee shop in Santa Monica, the Unurban Coffee House. And when I worked on it, I worked on it because I wanted to not like suck in front of all these people. But the more I worked on it, the more I thought, this is amazing. And when I read it in front of that audience, I knew like by 2 or 3 pages in, we're doing this, because they were just in the palm of my hands and I was just reading this story. And so immediately, I mean, the reaction was fantastic. And there were some heavy hitters in there. Beth Henley, who wrote Crimes of the Heart.
Crimes of the Heart. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Pulitzer Prize winning playwright Beth Henley was there, who Champ knew from Chicago and had worked with her as an actor. I think The Lucky Spot was a play they did. But she was there. And, she gave him a lot of really, supportive conversation about it, and ended up giving us a quote to use that we used heavily to get, people to come see the show. Robert Shapiro is his lawyer, and he came to opening night when we did it at the theater.
Okay.
But with Champ, like I had a conversation with him that day when we did the first reading in front of these people at this coffee shop. I said, we need to do this. And I spent the next 2 weeks memorizing it, because I knew if I memorized that story, I could tell it. And that was I've never memorized anything that long in my life. And it's a really hard thing to memorize, but I kind of figured it out, that he had done sort of a chronological story thing. So I could figure out how old Christian was. Anyway, I memorized it and I just started getting in front of people and telling the story. And every time I did that, it just got a little bit more, inside of me. And then we started like putting it up. We went to Unurban Coffee House and we invited people to buy tickets, and we did the show there 3 or 4 times. And then we put up a full run of it at the Santa Monica Playhouse. I've done it in New Orleans. I've done it in Baton Rouge about 3 or 4 times. I took it to LSU right after we started doing it at the coffee house. I did it at the Black Box at LSU for free in front of 150 friends. And it was phenomenal, to do it in that space. But yeah, then you saw it at Bistro Byron's, which I've done it there twice. Yeah, I did it in San Francisco right before pandemic. And then after pandemic, we did it at Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, Scotland. And it has a life because it's just such an amazing story. And I'll say this. Yeah, I think I'm good in it. I do. But it doesn't matter if I'm good.
Right.
The story is so good that like I could literally just sit there and do nothing and just tell you the story, or I could kind of suck and tell you the story, and you're still going to be riveted because the story is that powerful. Yeah. And so for me as an actor, I'll never let go of it, because I don't think I'll ever be offered the chance to do something that rich. I mean, because it's an interesting guy's entire life told in an hour. And the day that somebody gets me to play something that's as powerful and as interesting and as all-encompassing as that is the day I'll be like, really? There's no way. I mean, it's just this is sort of as big as it gets. And it's a curse and a blessing, because it kind of makes everything else pale in comparison a little. But it also gives me the idea that go, you know what? I still have gifts as an actor, and I have gifts as an artist. When I can get to do something like that at my age and go, yeah, I still love this.
Okay. Thank you so much. This was a really fascinating conversation. I really enjoyed it. Have a great day, okay? All right.
All right, lots of love. Tell your mom I said hi, and
Yeah. All right.
thank you. This was fun.
Yes, it was. Okay, bye.
All right, bye.